Tonight, between the time you fall asleep and the time the sun comes up, roughly 1 in 3 adults over the age of 50 will be torn out of deep sleep by the exact same thing. Not a sound, not a bad dream, a muscle. The calf seizes, it locks. It turns from soft tissue into something that feels like a fist of stone buried in your leg. And before you've even decided to move, you're on your feet on a cold floor. One hand on the wall, the other clamped around your own calf, just waiting for your leg to finish punishing you. It peaks in your 60s. It happens to more than half of people once they pass 80. For some, it's a once-a-month nuisance. For others, it's 3-4 nights a week. A few get it nightly. In one survey, 4 in 10 of the people who got these cramps got them 3 or more times a week, week after week, month after month. And here's the line the whole video turns on. Most of the people it grabs tonight will reach for the wrong fix. You'll blame the water you didn't drink. You'll blame the banana you didn't eat. You'll make a quiet promise to buy magnesium tomorrow. And next week, on a night you did everything right, it comes back anyway. One quick note before we start. If your evenings also bring heavy, swollen, puffy legs, the ankles that don't quite go down, the tightness, the ache that isn't a cramp, that's a separate mechanism, and I've laid it out on its own in the drainage protocol linked below. But set that aside for tonight. Tonight is about the cramp itself, and one move lasting about 30 seconds that can stop one while it's happening. Let me describe the moment back to you because you know it more honestly than any medical paper does. You're lying still. Maybe you stretched, maybe you rolled over, maybe you did absolutely nothing, and the calf grabs. It isn't a twinge or an ache, it's a vice closing. You can press your fingers into the muscle and feel the knot, hard as wood, and the pain has a strange quality, bright, almost electric, and it does not care in the slightest how much you drank with dinner. You hobble, you stretch, you wait. Eventually, it eases and you limp back to bed with the muscle still sore, dreading the next one. And here's the part no one counts. It isn't only the pain, it's the sleep it steals. You're wide awake now, heart going, calf throbbing, and the bed has gone cold. Some people lie there afraid to stretch again in case they set it off. Some stop sleeping on their back. Some quietly start dreading bedtime itself. The cramp lasts 2 minutes. The night it ruins lasts until morning. Do that a few times a week for months, and it wears on you in a way the word cramp doesn't begin to capture. So no, this is not a small thing, and I won't treat it like one. And if you've been wondering whether it's just you, it isn't. It shows up a little more often in women than in men, and it leans hardest on anyone whose days are mostly spent sitting. If that's you, you're not doing anything wrong. You're simply carrying the exact set of conditions that make a calf more likely to seize in the night. A move that costs nothing and takes half a minute doesn't get much airtime, so let me give it the time it deserves. Here's the belief almost everyone carries into that 3 a.m. moment. The story says a cramp means your muscle is thirsty or starved of a mineral. Low water, low potassium, low magnesium. Refill the tank, the story says, and the cramp lets go. So you drink more before bed, you eat more bananas. Maybe you keep tonic water on the nightstand because someone's grandmother swore it worked. And once in a while it seems to help, which is exactly what keeps the belief alive. But then the cramp returns on a night when you were well hydrated, after a dinner full of greens, and the story quietly comes apart in your hands. It comes apart because it was aimed at the wrong target from the very start. So let me tell you what is actually happening down in that calf. A cramp is not a fuel shortage. A cramp is an electrical event. The order to contract never starts in the muscle. It starts in a nerve. Specifically, a motor neuron sitting in your spinal cord sends the signal down the line and the muscle obeys. During a night cramp, that motor neuron misbehaves. Researchers describe it developing what they call persistent inward currents. In plain words, the switch jams in the on position, and then something worse happens. The neuron fires, the muscle clenches, and the clenched muscle sends a signal back up the line that excites the neuron even more. So it fires harder. So the muscle clenches tighter. So the signal grows louder. Round and round. It's a loop that feeds itself and won't let go. Left completely alone, your body usually does break it eventually, but eventually is the longest 2 minutes of your night. The move I'm going to give you simply breaks it now on purpose, instead of waiting and hoping. So throw out the picture of a thirsty muscle and replace it with this one. Picture a car alarm going off in the street at 3 o'clock in the morning. Something set it off. A gust of wind, a passing truck, maybe nothing at all, and whatever it was is already long gone. But the alarm doesn't know that. The circuit has latched. It just keeps screaming into the dark, and it will keep screaming until something actually resets the circuit. You can stand at the window and shout at it. You can wait for the battery to die. Neither one touches the thing that's actually stuck. That is your cramp. The trigger, the odd movement, the toe pointed under the blanket, the long day on your feet is already over and done. What's left behind is a latched circuit, locked on, screaming. Now look again at what you've been doing about it. Drinking water during a cramp is like running outside and spraying the car with a garden hose. You can soak that car until sunrise. The water never once touches the alarm circuit. That is why the banana feels useless at 3 o'clock in the morning, because it is. You're treating the bodywork. The problem is in the wiring. And once you really see that this is wiring, not nutrition, the right fix almost designs itself. If this is the kind of explanation your last appointment never had the minutes for, subscribe. We take one mechanism at a time here, exactly like this, every week. Before I hand you the reset, I have to draw one hard line because this is the line that keeps you safe, and I won't skip it. A cramp grips, and then it lets go. That is its entire signature. It seizes its agony for anywhere from a few seconds to a few minutes, and then it releases and leaves the muscle tender. A blood clot does not behave that way. So hold on to this rule. If one calf, and it's usually just one, is swollen, warm to the touch, red or darker than the other leg, and tender, and it stays that way, that is not a cramp. That can be a clot sitting deep in the leg, and that is a same-day emergency, not something to stretch out and sleep off. Don't wait for morning. Don't talk yourself out of it. A few more signals that turn this into a doctor's conversation rather than a video. If your cramps come alongside muscle that's visibly getting weaker or shrinking over weeks, if you've got numbness or tingling that's creeping and spreading, if you get a deep ache in the leg when you walk that disappears the moment you stop and rest, that particular pattern can point to the arteries narrowing, and it deserves a proper look. And if these cramps are brand new, sudden, and relentless, get seen, because medications, kidneys, the thyroid, and a handful of other things can drive them. Hear me clearly, the large majority of night cramps are harmless, but most is not all, and you deserve to know exactly where the difference lies. Now, with that line firmly drawn, let me take you deeper into the wiring, because the moment you understand it, the 30-second move stops being a party trick and becomes the obvious thing to do. First, let me separate two things people lump together. There's the cramp you get during hard exercise mid-effort when a worked muscle locks up, and there's the one we're talking about, the one that arrives at rest in bed, out of nowhere, in an older leg. They look similar in the moment, but the night kind has its own setup, and it has its own fix. So if you've ever been told you just need to train harder or drink a sports drink, understand that advice was written for the other cramp, not for yours. Now, the question almost no one answers properly. Why does the night kind happen more as the years go by? Because you're older explains nothing. Here is the specific change. Across the decades, you slowly lose motor neurons, the nerve cells that drive your muscles, and you lose them faster in your legs than in your arms. The ones that remain take over more muscle fibers than they used to, and they become a little twitchier, a little quicker to fire on their own. At the very same time, tendons shorten and stiffen, the Achilles especially, and especially if your days involve a lot of sitting. A shorter tendon and a tighter calf sit closer to their cramping threshold all the time. So the leg that never once cramped when you were 40 is, at 68, sitting cocked and primed like a mousetrap set just a hair too sensitive. Now add the everyday triggers and the trap snaps. A day with too little movement is one of the strongest things we can actually tie to night cramps, being sedentary, sitting for hours, letting the legs go still. Or strangely, the opposite, a day with too much, where the muscle is worn out and fatigued. And then, the position you sleep in, which almost no one warns you about. When you lie on your back and the weight of the blanket presses your toes down and away from you, your calf spends hour after hour bunched up and shortened. Hold any muscle short for long enough, and you have handed it a standing invitation to fire. And here is why it strikes at 3 o'clock in the morning and not in the middle of your afternoon. At night, you stop moving. All day, the constant little adjustments, shifting your weight, standing, walking, flexing, keep the traffic between nerve and muscle calm and varied. Lie still for hours, and that traffic goes quiet. And a quiet system gets twitchy. Your foot drifts into that pointed position. The calf settles into its very shortest length. And the part of your nervous system that would normally clamp down on a stray runaway signal is itself in a lighter, less watchful state during sleep. So, the same leg that behaved itself all day picks the deepest, stillest hour to snap. It isn't bad luck. It's the conditions all lining up at once. So that's the loaded trap. Now here is the off switch. And the wonderful thing is, your body already built one. It's wired into the tendon, and it's called the Golgi tendon organ. Think of it as a tension sensor sitting right where your calf muscle joins the Achilles. Its single job is to monitor pull. And when it senses that tendon being loaded and stretched hard, it fires a signal straight back to that overexcited motor neuron in your spine. And the message is blunt and immediate. Stand down, release. It is, quite literally, the reset switch on the latched alarm. And here's the part that changes your nights. You can trip that switch on purpose. You trip it by stretching the very muscle that's cramping, loading the tendon until the sensor fires and overrides the runaway loop. That's the whole secret of why the move works in 30 seconds flat. You are not warming the muscle. You are not feeding it. You are reaching straight past the muscle to flip the nerve. This is also exactly why the popular fixes keep letting you down. A Cochrane review, which is the careful pulling together of all the trials at once, the closest thing we have to a verdict, found that magnesium is unlikely to make any meaningful difference for older adults with these ordinary night cramps. Potassium isn't your lever either, unless you have a true deficiency that a blood test would actually catch. And quinine, the bitter compound in tonic water that grandmother swore by, was used for years, but regulators have specifically warned against using it for cramps because the risks, especially in older people, can outweigh a fairly small benefit. None of this is medical advice for your particular body. If you're taking anything for cramps right now, that belongs in a conversation with your own clinician. And one more honest piece, because it genuinely surprises people. Certain medications are tied to more night cramps, water pills, statins, and most strongly inhaled long-acting bronchodilators, the kind used in asthma and COPD inhalers. One large study in JAMA Internal Medicine linked those to roughly 2.5 times the risk. Now hear this carefully because it matters. I am not telling you to stop a single one of them. Stopping a prescription on your own can be far more dangerous than any cramp. I'm telling you to raise it so that you and your doctor can weigh it together with all the facts on the table. Let me clear up one more thing people get backwards because it sends them down the wrong road for years. Restless legs and night cramps are not the same animal, and they don't share the same fix. Restless legs is a crawling, uncomfortable urge to move your legs, and moving them brings relief. A cramp is a hard, painful, involuntary lock that you can feel with your own hand. If your real problem is the restless urge, then the stretch and the heel raises aren't your answer, and it's worth naming it correctly with your doctor. Right name, right fix. Now, let's make all of this yours because general rules are nice and your own legs are better teachers. Here are a few things you can check tonight. No equipment, nothing to buy. First, the sleep position check. Tonight, before you drift off, just notice where your feet are pointing under the covers. If your toes are pulled down and away from you, your calf is sitting shortened hour after hour. That's a primed leg. It's telling you the position itself is part of your problem and that it's free to fix, which we'll do in a minute. Second, the tightness check. Stand about an arm's length from a wall. Step 1 foot back. Keep that back heel flat on the floor and lean your weight gently into the wall. You should feel a clear pull up the back of the calf. Now compare sides. If one side is far tighter, or you can barely keep that heel down, that calf is short and stiff, which is exactly the kind of calf that cramps in the night. A tight calf isn't a flaw in you. It's just a muscle that's been sitting short for too long, and it's the most fixable thing on this whole list. Third, And this is the one that proves the entire point the next time a cramp actually hits. Do the move I'm about to teach you and time it. If pulling your foot toward your shin ends the cramp inside about 30 seconds, you have just confirmed with your own leg that the cramp was a nerve reflex event. And you've confirmed that this move is your tool. The stretch beat the banana. It will beat it every single time. Fourth, keep a small note for 1 week. Which nights did it strike? After a still sitting day or after a busy active one? What were your feet doing? You are not trying to diagnose yourself here. You're finding your own pattern, and your pattern is worth more to you than any rule I could give you because it's yours. And one more because it decides where you aim the move. When a cramp hits, notice exactly where it grips. Most of the time it's the calf, the big muscle at the back. Sometimes it's the arch or the toes of the foot curling under. Occasionally, it's the back of the thigh. Wherever it grabs, that's the muscle you stretch. You lengthen the one that's locked. Knowing your usual spot ahead of time means you won't be fumbling in the dark when it counts. Let me clear out the kitchen myths quickly because each one is quietly costing you sleep. The banana trap. Potassium matters, of course it does, but for ordinary night cramps, it is almost never the missing piece, and reaching for it in the middle of a cramp does nothing whatsoever for a latch nerve. Eat the banana at breakfast because it's good food. Just don't ask it to be a fire extinguisher. The tonic water trap. The quinine in it sits there in tiny amounts, and as I said, regulators have steered people firmly away from quinine for cramps. A nightly glass is not the gentle folk remedy it's been dressed up to be. The supplement trap. A bottle of magnesium feels like doing something, it feels like action. And for most older adults with these particular cramps, the evidence simply doesn't show it doing much at all. If it helps you and your doctor is fine with it, there's no harm done. Just don't let it quietly stand in for the move that actually works. And one folk move that's actually half right, walking it off. Once a cramp has released, a few slow steps genuinely do help the muscle settle, so that piece earns its keep. But trying to march through a cramp that's still locked on a leg that won't hold you only risks a fall on a dark floor. Release it first with the stretch, then walk. The order matters more than people think. So what is food good for here? It supports the whole system, real minerals from real meals. Sensible water spread across the day rather than a flood right before bed, which only wakes you up to visit the bathroom anyway. Useful, supportive, but not the lever. The lever is the nerve, and you reach the nerve with movement, not a snack. So here's the full sequence. The move that stops the cramp already in progress, and then the routine that keeps the cramps from coming back in the first place. We start with the move, the one for 3 o'clock in the morning. The very instant your calf seizes, your only job is to load that tendon. If you can manage it from bed, straighten the cramping leg and pull your foot upward, toes reaching toward your shin as far as it will go. Use your hand if you need to grab the ball of your foot, or loop a towel or the corner of a sheet around it and draw it towards you, keeping that knee straight. If you'd rather be on your feet, step the cramping leg back behind you, press that heel flat into the floor, and lean your weight forward into a wall or a sturdy dresser. Either way, the goal is identical. You are stretching the calf and loading the Achilles tendon. Hold it, breathe slowly, keep the pressure steady, and don't bounce. Usually, somewhere between 10 and 30 seconds, you'll feel the vise begin to let go. That release is the tension sensor firing. That is your reset. A few honest what-ifs, because the real world is untidy. If you can't reach your foot, a stiff back, a sore shoulder, it happens. That's exactly what the towel or the sheet is for. Loop it around the ball of your foot and pull from there. If standing feels steadier than folding yourself over in bed, get to the wall instead. If the cramp is in your foot rather than your calf, stand and press the toes flat to the floor or draw them up towards you with your hand. And if it won't fully release after the first hold, ease off for one slow breath, then load it again. Sometimes the circuit just needs a second nudge. The one thing you never do is fight it with a hard bouncing yank. Slow, firm, steady. That's the only language the tension sensor understands. The very moment it releases, don't just crumple back into bed. Take a few slow, deliberate steps. Walking gently on your heels is ideal, or do one more easy, unforced stretch and let the muscle settle down. A little warmth helps the soreness that lingers. A warm cloth or a heating pad on a low setting. The cramp is over, but the muscle remembers it for a while. So treat it kindly. That handles tonight. Now, the part the title promised you, keeping it from coming back. And I'll be straight with you. That's a different job than stopping the one you're having. It's mostly about conditioning the whole nerve and muscle loop and changing how you spend the night. Before bed, give the calf a real stretch. The wall lean again, back heel, press down, lean and hold for around 30 seconds. Then a second round with that back knee slightly bent, which catches a deeper part of the muscle. Add a gentle hamstring stretch if you can reach it comfortably. Research suggests that stretching the calves and hamstrings before sleep may reduce how often these night cramps return. And I'll be honest with you, because you deserve honesty, the evidence is mixed, not airtight, but it costs nothing. It's safe. And for a great many people, it turns out to be the one change that finally quiets the nights. During the day, gently rebuild the leg. Slow heel raises are perfect. Rise up onto the balls of your feet. Hold for a moment at the top, then lower yourself down with control. A couple of easy sets with a hand resting on the counter for balance. What you're doing is rebuilding the strength and the tendon length that the years quietly carried off. A stronger, longer calf sits further away from its cramping threshold, further from the edge. Then fix the sleep position, because this is the step almost everyone skips and almost everyone needs. Keep your toes from pointing down all night long. Loosen the blankets at the foot of the bed so they don't press your feet flat and away. If you sleep on your back, a small pillow or a rolled towel placed to keep the foot in a neutral position can do the whole job. You are simply refusing to let that calf sit shortened for 8 hours straight. And through the day, move. Don't sit unbroken for hours at a stretch. Get up, walk a little, let the blood in the legs circulate. Of everything on this entire list, breaking up those long stretches of sitting may matter the most, because being sedentary is one of the very strongest things we can actually connect to these cramps in the first place. And give it a little patience, because this part isn't instant. In the first week, the move itself is your win. You'll stop a cramp cold, and that alone changes how bedtime feels. Over the next couple of weeks, as the nightly stretch and the looser blankets do their quiet work, many people notice the cramps arriving less often or hitting softer when they do come. By a month or so in, if you've kept the conditioning up, plenty of people find whole stretches of unbroken nights. It isn't a switch you flip once, it's a leg you slowly walk back from the edge. Subscribe before you go. Almost all of these mechanisms link to one another, and the next video builds straight on top of this one. Let me hand you tonight in 5 steps, simple enough to remember half asleep. 1. When it hits, pull your toes toward your shin, knee straight, and hold until it releases. That is the reset. 2. Once it lets go, take a few slow steps on your heels and add a little warmth. 3. Tonight before bed, do one slow calf stretch against the wall about 30 seconds on each leg. 4. Loosen the blanket so your feet aren't pinned, pointing downward while you sleep. 5. Tomorrow, don't sit for hours unbroken. Get up and move your legs, even just briefly, several times. That's the whole thing. 1 move for the emergency, 4 small habits so the emergency stops paying you visits. I want to ask you something, and your answer genuinely shapes what I write next. What decade are you in right now? Your 50s, your 60s, your 70s, your 80s? Tell me down in the comments. I'm not asking to make conversation. The nerve changes I walked you through don't arrive at the same age for everyone, and which of these steps matters most quietly shifts depending on where you are on that road. So tell me where you are, and I'll write the next one for the people who are actually here watching. Here's what I want you to carry out of this. For years, you've treated a cramp like a shortage, as if your leg had run low on something you could simply pour back in. It never was. It was a circuit that latched itself on in the dark and wouldn't release. And now you know exactly where the reset lives, and you can reach it with your own 2 hands in about 30 seconds. That changes the whole feeling of 3 o'clock in the morning. You're no longer standing helpless on a cold floor, waiting for your own leg to release you whenever it feels like it. You have the move, you understand why it works, and you know the handful of small free things that make the next night and the one after that quieter. So the next time that calf grabs hold of you in the dark, you won't lie there bracing and hoping. You'll know precisely what to do and why it works before your foot even hits the floor. Don't reach for the water on the nightstand. Reach for your foot.